G'day folks, welcome back to Delboy's Garage. Now today is going to be link plates or dog bones, as is their common Sunday name. You can see the state of this place. It's absolutely ridiculous. I wanted to put the two bikes outside, but as you might be able to hear, it is howling a gale out there, pissing down the rain. So we're going to do it all inside with everything stacked around us, just because it's more fun. So there we go. Honestly, till we get the shed, all this crap, we just can't get rid of it all. It's all stuck here and tripping over it all, but we've got a space to work in, so that should be fine. Now, dog bones, lowering the back of a Monoshock motorcycle. It's a hugely popular thing. Many people do it. You do it for jacking up. If you want the steering to be a little bit more feisty, you do it for lowering the back. If you want to be able to reach the ground because you've got little legs. Now, there are many reasons for doing it, but it's a very common job. You can buy the link plates for as little as £15. If you buy the cheap ones, right up to £50–60 for adjustable ones or more. And it's a very simple job, but it does involve dismantling the back suspension, or just partially dismantling it. So it does strike fear into some of the unwitting and those who are not sure about what to do. So here it is. Stick around, stay tuned, as Mr. Bethel says, and I'll show you how it works. Alright, the first job, just as you can see, the ridiculous cramped conditions for today's job. First thing is to get the back wheel off the ground and get the bike suspended centrally. Now obviously on the old rummage Bandit, I've put in this long swing arm with a brace, and with a braced swinging arm you have to jump the main stand and the bolt. Now the best thing in the world to do if you ever take your main stand off is keep it. It really is, because in situations like this the main stand is essential. And all I've got to do now is poke the main stand back on the bike so that I can suspend the back wheel off the ground and be able to move the suspension. No good on a paddock stand, because the weight is on the bike, or the weight is on that swinging arm, and I need to lift that and get the suspension links out. So the first job, stick the main stand back in, just on one bolt for now. Okay, this is the old orifice where the main stand came from. Just going to pop it back in into its little slot. There's no need to put the spring on it, because it's going to be sat just upright, and then just bolt that in with a little bit of gusto, and that will stay in place and stand up on it. You can put the other bolt in if you like, but that means dropping the exhaust off, and I'm not interested. Done this a few times just as it is. Just nip it up, and that does that bit. So there we go. Right, now the first thing, if we're going to jack this or drop this down a bit, is to measure exactly how high it currently is before we start, and then we can measure afterwards. Alright, before we start, always measure from the axle up to whatever point something it touches that's going to be in the same place when you're finished. So we'll come up under the indicator on that inside edge, hold it on there, bottom of the axle there, 18.5 inch. So that's currently 18.5. So that's where we are at the minute. We'll remember that, 18.5 inches, and we'll see what it is when it's finished. So next thing, okay, this is one of the plates that we're going to replace. There they are. And that links the swing arm at the top to the suspension link at the bottom. And where it goes, as you can see, you come in there, there's the top of it, and down there is the bottom of it. We've got to undo that nut and that nut to remove the bolts. Withdraw the bolts out that side of the bike, and then there's one this side and there's one over that side as well, either side of that, so they run down here to the short link underneath. So let's take these off. It's windy in there. See, there's a storm going on.
Nearer the sea. We're nearer the sea now.
I'll get the top nut off first. You can't get a socket in there. It is a painstaking pain in the arse with a ring spanner. Right, top nut off. Just preserve the washer. And the bottom one. Right. Right, there we go. Now, camera. Now, there you maybe see, but under there now Can you hold torch? Under there now. That's the bottom of one of the link plates. There. That's the bottom there, and there's a bolt across that side which can just be withdrawn to preserve the washers out of there. There's little shims that go in these joints, so that when the link plate's bolted up tight, in the center of this, just to show you that, there's a little bush that goes inside there, like a, hang on, if I can push it out a bit, can't quite push it out. There's a rotating bush inside this short link here, which sticks out just a little tiny bit, so that when that's bolted up tight, it doesn't just clamp against the metal and sit still. It has to actually pivot and rotate. That's its job. It is a swing arm pivot. All this has to pivot, so you get little tubes inside, effectively a tube with needle rollers, and that tube sticks out about probably 1/16 or 32nd of an inch, just enough to keep that off the surface, of that, and then you need a little washer just to shim them out. So there's the bottoms dropped off. Now if we get the top bolt out, they'll both drop out. Right, to get the top bolt out, which is there, obviously that will come out. The chain can be lifted out the way, but this can't, so we just got to take this plate off to get access to it, and it just drops off these 3 rubber bushes, captive bolts, or captive threads in the frame. Okay, take those out, just let that drop on its linkage. Rubber gaskets in there, just leave it there on its own. Right, loosen it off. A little bit of crud on that. Now once that comes out enough, that's it. And there's one dropped out the other side. Now these are aftermarket ones, these are jack-up plates. I'll explain why we use them in a minute. Okay, back on there, like that. Is that in focus?
Yep.
Right, lift that out of the way, so you can jiggle and bolt out. And then right till there, and then out the bottom. And there's the other one. Simple as that. Now this is the first thing you'll see. I can come around there. Sorry, this is the most ridiculous working space. Now there's one of the new ones. Now you see we're going to lower the bike, but they are longer by half a hole, literally 6mm longer, but they will drop the bike by a significant amount. So the first job is bolt the first one back in. Okay, just insert up from underneath. Hang on, maybe there. Hold that there. That's it. And then pop the bolt back in through. Just lift the chain out of the way. Now again, important to have a washer on there, because as you tighten it up, you don't want it to jam against the plate. So that one's in, and we'll put the other one up through. Stay there. That's it. Right, just loose fit the top one. You can put a little bit of WD-40 or grease in there if yours is a bit dry, but I've had these in and out a few times over the years, so. Okay, that being the best solution, check the back up a bit. Now, should be able to feed those through. As you can see, this is just ridiculous with this light, or lack of it. But that's what we got. There we go. Put the shims on the inside. And there we are. So they're both linked on. Pop the nut in place.
just spinning the bolt rather than the nut, because that then ensures that the nut, that the bolt doesn't jam up. And jam the system, or jam the mechanism itself. Okay, now just get some torque into that. Hold that in. And just get some meat into it. It doesn't need to be hugely tight because it's a fine thread and it's a lock nut, a nylock nut. Like on this one, for instance, having 2 or 3 threads coming out the end of the nut, that's very, very important indeed. If the nut's protruding off the end, that's all bad, because that can just undo itself, because the nylon piece that locks that on is right in the end of this nut. So just make sure that goes on absolutely completely. There we are. Now time to the top ones up. Right, just same procedure, just do the bolt, rotate the bolt rather than the nut, and hold the nut still. That way you ensure that right the way through the doing up process that the bolt doesn't jam in its tube. There's a metal tube inside there that it's bolted through, and that the mechanism will still go up and down. It won't jam it. When it gets to a point where it's tight, like there, you can then come this side and give that the nut just a last, the final lift for that extra bit of power. Moving. That's it. Doesn't need to be tight. I mean, there will be a torque setting, I'm quite sure, if you go looking it up. But you know me, FT, that's good enough. Put some willy on it. There we go. Alright. Now they're both done up. That is pretty much the job done. So before we start getting the marker paint out, I've just got to put this back on. And then get the centre stand off and drop it off and see how much lower it is. Again, you can use the opportunity with all of these jobs to just get yourself a little bit more lubrication on there. Stick some copper slip on the bolts if that's the sort of practice that you like to do. There's already grease on these bolts because I do have them in and out reasonably often. And again, if you maintain your bike properly and you take things on and off and you interact with it, do your own maintenance and stuff, you'll find that fasteners don't get jammed up because they're on and off the bike reasonably often. There we are. Don't need to be wound up too tight. Got like a rubber gasket in there. That's it. Fine. There we are. Now finally the main stand. All right. This has got to stand on record as the most cramped and ridiculous job we've ever done. No space. Right, definitely a lot lower. Main stand, ever useful. Never ceases to serve. Right, now the final thing with this particular issue, because it was backed up, or jacked up rather, about 4 inches initially, I did put just a little extender on the side stand. Come on now, show. And all it is, you can do this yourself if you're going to jack your bike up, rather than cutting your stand. All I did now, this was just a bodge, again, typical rat bike feel, just something to lift up that height so that the bike didn't lean over too far. If your bike leans over a long way, one of the best ways to deal with it is get a big stout bolt, drill a hole in the foot of the stand and just poke a big bolt through it. That's all I've used. big bolt like that gave me that much extra height, and now that's back to standard height as it was before. Simple. Right, there we go. Tools out of the way. Now I don't know whether you can see here, we were 18.5 to the middle of the axle, so we come from that point again. There we are, 16.5. So at the axle, that's dropped the back of the bike by 2 inches, and that was literally one of those link plates or dog bones, half the hole, so 5mm shorter. That's all that was, because obviously the linkage is right at the front, and if you look at any cantilever, a little bit of movement here translates to a lot more movement here. So 2 inches at the back is only 5mm at the front. It's just simple maths really. So there we are. Now that's going to sit a lot lower. Can't get it out, can't show you it, but that's how you change the dog bones. It's pretty simple. The top of them bolt to the swinging arm, the bottom of them bolt to the short link. Take the nuts off, withdraw the bolts, the plates drop out, slip the new plates in, put the bolt back through the top, the bottom. You have to lift the wheel up, obviously, as the new ones are a different height, or if you're jacking your bike up, obviously something that's important to do before you start the job is make sure that you've got room for the wheel to drop down. So lift the machine, lift the entire bike up high enough when you start, so there's maybe that much under the back wheel, because you're jacking the bike up, which means the wheel's going to come further down when it's finished. Nothing worse than trying to get the bottom bolt in and you find the wheel's on the ground and you can't. You then got to start jacking the bike up, it gets a bit unstable. So think ahead, use your common sense. It's a very, very simple job, and dealers will do it sometimes grudgingly. Sometimes these people won't like it because it chucks out the geometry. And also remember, if you're jacking your bike up, that stands the forks up more, so it makes the steering a bit more feisty. If you're jacking your back down, that lays the forks out, makes them a little bit more lazy. So this bike's now going to be a lot easier, or a lot more docile in the bends. I've got 10mm on the front, just lowered. I'm going to lift a little bit more later on, but that's not relevant. I'm not going to show you today. And that's all it was, link plates. So there you go. That's how you do it. That little test sit. So you can see at the minute how much lower that is at the bottom. And it will be very different height. It's a lot lower and it sits nicely on the stand. The best test is getting on it. Now if you've got a Bandit and you know how high it sits when you're riding it, I'm 5'11" and that's bent leg just with trainers on. This is very low now. The central block of the exhaust, this is about as low as you can go on a Bandit 12 or even on a 6, because you've got the 4-into-1 exhaust collector. It's about 2 inches, 2.5 inches off the floor now. That's it. And it doesn't really ground because the suspension is quite stiff. And if you want to, this suspension's on its lowest setting now, which is what I wanted. That look at the back. Get into it. So that is a little bit more like it. That's how we first had it when I first finished building the bike and got that stance nice and low. Okay, so that's it. It's a pretty simple job. Now I want to say two things really, and it's really important. Once you've had your suspension apart, get hold of your marker paint. Now in my case, at the moment, I just use orange nail varnish. You can use whatever you like, Tipex, an engineering pen if you want to be posh, or just anything that will stay there and won't wash off. And all you do is take a dot and put it on the nut that you've done up on the top. That's all it takes. You can put a little piece adjacent on the bolt, see if it turns, but it's not likely that those nuts will undo themselves. Do them up to the correct height. If you have a manual, check the suspension settings, check the torque settings on those bolts. Sometimes they're not there. In the Haynes manual, I couldn't find them for that bike, but that's Haynes for you. They're like that. And just use your common sense. Keep an eye on that dot, little orange dot or a white dot of paint on top of the bolt, right uppermost at 12 o'clock. And then for the first few times you ride it, just make sure that dot stays the same. If it rotates, you know it's undoing itself. You can, if necessary, put one on the bolt head and one on the nut, because sometimes the whole lot will rotate, which means it's not coming undone, it's just rotating, which means you just need to do it up a little bit tighter so it stops. And that's that. So you can see the conditions we're working in. It's absolute rubbish at the minute. We're completely stacked out with crap, but we will get straight. I just wanted to get the first video up after the move
in the garage. There it is, dog bones, lowering or raising your bike. If you're going to jack your bike up, it's going to make your steering a bit more feisty. Like I said, you might want to lift the front end a little bit as well. If you're going to lower your bike right down, you might want to lower the front a little bit just by lifting the forks up through the yokes or trees or clamps or whatever you call them, things that hold onto your fork legs, and that will make the bike balanced. Again, remember, whatever you lower the back by, try and lower the front by the same, and you maintain the bike's geometry. If you only lower one end and not the other, you alter the bike's geometry. Not necessarily for the worse, but you alter it, so just be aware of that. So there you go, that's all it was. Ride safe. Thank you for watching. As ever, thanks for the amazing support since we've been offline. It's good to be back. There's some ride videos coming if this bad weather breaks. We've got just a little spell of summer bad weather, and then we'll be back out on the bikes as well. So there you go, take it easy, ride safe. Thanks for watching Delboy's Garage. I'll see you next time.